Let me see. ATM audio. I'm back on live there. I'm just going to wait just a second to see if maybe you guys are even back. I'm not really sure how this works. Sorry, guys. I think it's me, though. I'm trying to, in case you can hear me, I really want to move over to Mac because of, well, it's a long story, but, and this is what happens when I stream on the Mac, I think. It's just not reliable. Okay, it looks like you guys aren't hearing me now either. Can hear you. I can hear you. All good. Okay, guys, I'm gonna make it a point to not stream using my Mac anymore. It's got to be that. If you remember the last couple times, all of a sudden I would try and play the closing credits, and I just couldn't hear. So, thanks for sticking with me. Sorry about the audio problems. Apple Winkus. Yeah, it does suck because honestly, there's like a very specific technical reason that's kind of cool that I wanted to utilize, but I would need to stream on the Mac to do it. It looks like that was the thing. I wonder if Rockfin, if that's just still works. Graham, I wonder, Graham, if you can hear me. Apple, I'm going to get back to show here. I appreciate you guys waiting. Just 2 minutes lost. Whoops. Here we go. So, probably, you probably heard enough in reference to the psychology. I hope you heard the part about even human sacrifice is like kind of below slavery. Slavery goes into like indentured servitude. Indentured servitude goes into employment. I'm assuming you heard all that. And so you end up seeing why we have things like this, right? To the Aztec, afterlife was determined more about how you died than how you lived. And this isn't me trying to say, oh, well, you should not worry about how you live. You should just totally worry about how you die. No. I'm trying to tell you about the psychology. Do you understand the psychology? Your focus in life was how well am I going to die? That's actually just showing you just how much importance you even have, how much electricity you even have to place on yourself. You know, one of the things I wrote in my new book, sorry, but it's true. One of the things I wrote in my new book is kind of controversial, but it really does deal with this idea that most of our history of slavery explains that, oh, and then when the king died, all of his slaves were murdered too and placed in the pit. And every time I try and wear that idea on in modern psychology, it doesn't fit. It doesn't work. The only way that I can wear that idea and call it valid is if I picture that these people, the slaves that were murdered in the tomb too, literally would be hurt and unable to take care of themselves if they went on. That would be the only way that I could see how this would make sense as being something that anyone would even do. Keep in mind that pharaohs were ritually murdered when they got old. If you got to be 55 as a pharaoh, I'm not saying it was 55, but if you got to be 55, if you got to a certain age, and it wasn't, I don't know if it was based on age, but if you when you got old and you were pharaoh, you were ritually murdered. It was a ritual, right? And so imagine as any ritual that's happening in Egypt, right? It's going to be, oh, the festival of the grand pineapple begins, sire. We've made you this pineapple robe, right? And your entire life, you've been like, yes, put me in this robe so I will go represent, the festival of Amun and the festival of Mut and the festival of the sacred barge of, Plantagenet, right? And that one day they come in and they're like, oh, yes, it's time for the sacred murdering of the pharaoh. And you're like, okay, it was what? That was standard because the psychology of man wasn't strong enough to see past its hive. Ants live this way. Bees live this way. A lot of mammals live this way, right? Humans live this way. They live this way too. We just pretend that we don't. We just pretend that, no. We don't do that. No, that's the other guy's doing that, right? When a man died, he was henceforth addressed as God Kukuksten. I'm sorry, Kukuksten. When a woman died, she was henceforth addressed as Goddess Chamotzen, or deity. To die is literally to become God, right? Do you know why colonial in America people were coming over and they were building their home and they would build their hearth, and after they would build their hearth you would come into their home where they have a table and you would see that they would still cook on the floor, and I want you to think about the psychology of being that close to the floor. That living down is that very much that me raccoony, right, kind of mentality. It's staying low. You feel more comfortable when you're low. So all these early our ancestors, assuming you came from here and did all that, all our ancestors were built on the chiropractic nightmares of people that could have just stood up. They could have just stood up. And you know that in history, people have gotten taller, right? You probably know that. And you also know that the word giant isn't necessarily means that someone's taller. But right now, we're comparing Neanderthal to hominin, or to some variation of these two things, I should say. And with that comes this psychological raising up out of the muck, creating the ego. The ego is born. And the ego, no wonder we have such a shitty attitude about the ego, because look at how much blood had to be shed in order for the ego to even recognize itself, right? Ad hominem, yeah. That was funny. That was, yeah. For it to even recognize itself. And so animism was easier when we lacked the psychology. We could become infused with divine essence, right? We could become infused with something because we didn't have a strong enough psychology ourselves. This happens when you dance. This happens when you play an instrument. This happens when you make art. Thank God, right? Thank goodness. Thank goodness that you haven't congealed so hard that you're still able to slip out of that. In a way, society has made you pretend to be a whatever your task is, right? And that task is pretty broad, right? It doesn't just mean what your job is. Inside your family, you have a task, right? And that when you find something to find release, what does that word release mean, right? You're releasing from that psychology and you're able to rummage through your own closet, your own sort of self, right? To develop your own sense of who you are. Look how close salvation and slavery are. SALV. SALV. SLAV. Sacrifice is just the evolutionary form of slavery. It's just, well, if I can't be a slave, maybe I can sacrifice myself. And what happens when you sacrifice yourself for the military? They give you clothes to wear. They give you a personality. They give you an ego. They say, this is who you are. And you're like, fuck yeah, I'm a lieutenant commander or whatever it is, right? You're given the identity because you don't have one. You don't have the psychology. You don't have the strength to hold and maintain that psychology of who you are the entire time, right? Man is finding himself in these things, right? And look at how we've twisted this. The Aztec gave medals if you captured an enemy alive. America actually gives medals if you got hurt. The medal goes to you because you sacrificed yourself to Thalok, right? You sacrificed yourself to that side of the pyramid. We must sacrifice with all our hearts. Even if others do not know us, we must fight to save the world. That's an armed forces saying, and it's an Aztec saying. It's actually an Aztec saying. But you know that America says it too, because the same eagle fighters are there, the same eagle warriors are there. But the eagle warrior was the brave one, and it's really changed that. The definition of that has really, really changed. The soil is speaking. We are not this blatantly blind. We have an appetite for this, which is why it comes up. It's coming from the soil. Guys, there was only two choices, and 80,000 people were walked up these steps in a matter of 10 days. 80,000 people. And on the way up, it was always, do you want to be sacrificed for rain or do you want to be sacrificed for war? It didn't matter if it was raining. It didn't matter if there was already war. That really wasn't the point, was it? I want you to look at this map of North and South America. And what is it? Guys, what is it? North and South America undulate. They rise up out of the ocean and fall again. The spines, two really large spines, right? Turtle Earth, North America, and South America, what we would call Brazil, right? Those are the humps of a giant serpent raising up out of Sheol. And you see the tail in Argentina, and you see the head, you see the plume in Canada. Think about how mentally deranged Canadians are comparatively to, say, Mexicans. And I don't even have to apologize. So you Canadians are like, yeah, he's fucking right on that. It is a much more of a mental. It's a different kind of psychology that blooms in different times. And I want you to think about that all this land is, Gaia is this undulating snake. What is this snake? That word is coatl, or coatl is how you would see that, right? Coatl, that's the snake. You now know half of Aztec history. If you just know that coatl means snake, you now are going to be able to translate almost every single myth that you ever see when you start to read this stuff. If any of you have done what I've done, where you're like, oh, this shit's too hard to remember all these names, just learn coatl. Because as soon as you do, you're like, oh, here's a snake, 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 right? And I want you to picture that the land undulates itself, that's the serpent. And that when that serpent burns, when it burns, the Quetzal comes. What is Quetzal? Plumes, feathers, feathers. Quetzal, feathers. Coatl, snake, the feathered serpent. South America, North America is the serpent. And it burns. Some of you have seen my work before. You may, sorry if the next two slides are boring, but I found out today a lot of people that follow my work don't know about this. So I need to say it again. In the city of Astana in Kazakhstan, if you go to Google Earth and you just look at that city, if you were to do that in 2013, you would have seen this, what's on the screen now. For those of you on the podcast, you're looking at it's a overhead, quote, quote, satellite view of a large park, and inside the park is the what looks like the outer remnants of a bird, but really what you're focusing on is that in the middle of this bird is this white snake. This white snake comes up through its tail and wraps and winds itself inside this serpent, and that was in 2013. And Quetzalcoatl promised the people of Mexica, the Mexicans, that he was going away. He said to them, I am going away. And they're like, Quetzal, don't leave us. We need you, buddy. And he's like, I must go away. And why? When they asked him, why must he go away? He says, because I will come back. Because I will come back. And in Astana, 5 years later, the serpent is filled with water. That same overhead satellite image now is full of water. And it's only if you were paying attention that you can really even see the serpent still there. It's beneath the water. You can still see the outlines of this. And the city of Astana is laid out with, Freemasonry just out the wazoo, right? It's completely covered in Joaquin and Boaz. It has an avenue. It leads to the pyramid on the back of the dollar bill. There's all this stuff. And while you and I are surrounded by people that are sacrificing each other, pretending that, well, it's because we got to have an Nuremberg trial, or we got to do this, or we got to do that. And by the way, man, if you want to string up Bill Gates and Fauci and blame him for all your problems and kill him, man, fine, go ahead. But you fucking know that the day after you do that, you haven't solved a damn fucking thing. You know that, right? You do know that. That doesn't solve anything. That the perpetrators are us because we are not being conscious with our own soil. And your skin is soil, isn't it? Your skin and your bones are soil. Your hair, if you have it, is soil. And you become conscious of that. And if you're not watching the very tips of those things, they will be cut. They will be removed. And if from the moment you're born, if you turn around, they will sell your dead second soul brother and make 50 grand off that placenta. They will do it. And you'll be like, oh, well, they told me it was worthless. It's like, yeah, it's so worthless, the hospital made 50 grand off of it. I don't know if those numbers are true, but probably. You get what I'm saying. And hey, go ahead, fine. Sacrifice them, fine. But you and I both know that actually doesn't help. That what helps is people becoming conscious, right? What helps is, hey, maybe we don't send anyone up there. There's a thought. Maybe we don't sacrifice to anyone. And people are like, what? But the whole world will end. It's like, no. What'll end is your consciousness pretending that you can only be real if someone else dies. And you will be forced to grow or perish. This is really what the fifth sun is about, guys. The four sons of creation in Aztec it's the rise of consciousness in man. And you know what I love about the Mexicans is because they were more willing to be honest about how they got there. People of Shazoo, right? The Shazoo of the Yahweh, right? Those people, they had this intricate fucking thing of like, no, you touch the goat and then you push the goat off the cliff and then you come back 3 days later, but then you put this ribbon on him. That way everything, it's the same dance. It's just a lot more formality around it, right? But when we're more honest, we can really look closer at what it is we do. And these people are being honest. The people that run Astana, you know that they're top level predators because they can just be honest. They can just say, Amaraka is a living creature that raises humanity on her back, literally plants their consciousness in her back. And that many will die, many will choose slavery, many will sacrifice themselves. And that the reason why they will sacrifice themselves is because they will slowly raise a new flag, a new kind of flower on this land. A living, conscious land. Quetzalcoatl, right? Quetzalcoatl. Phoenix is a plumed serpent. And she's drowning for Aquarius. And I'll tell you, guys, if you have problems putting up a personal boundary, one of the things that will really help is to realize that even when you're practicing putting up the boundary and like holding it, let's say you're feeling like guilty as shit for having it, I want you to know that that is actually constructive. It doesn't feel constructive, but you're building muscle that wasn't there. And the fact that it feels so awkward and uncomfortable is the actual act of you congealing muscle that didn't exist before. And it is progress. And the only thing that really sets us back, I think, is losing our progress because we feel futile inside the struggle. And the Aztec had a different, I think one of the beautiful things about Quetzalcoatl, if you look, what is the psychology of America? Think about it. Think about it. The white man landing. Remember in 1492, that was 2 years after the last 52 Reed Festival, right? We covered this about a month ago, but just 2 years prior to that, 80,000 people were just fucking sacrificed, their hearts pulled out. And the 52 Reed, the new fire ceremony was kicking in. That they were landing in a place, a way of thinking where bullying was important, where checking each other's strength was necessary in order to survive. This is the difference between hunting and surviving. It's a completely different kind of psychology. This lack of psychology, I think, could not be more appropriate than when we look at cannibalism. What I mean is that when you were trying to gain value as a person, not just you, but everyone around you, that even the fact that looking at someone else saying, I could eat you, is a sign of placing value in something. And that what I'm about to show you is that if we get to it today, because, yeah, I got dojo in 26 minutes. We might have to finish this Friday. But even cannibalism is a rising of value. Because the person that says, well, I don't want to be eaten, is the person that has a strong enough psychology that can actually withstand everyone around him and say no. That no isn't built in. We're not born with that sense of saying no. I know it looks like we are, but we're not. We certainly have some built-in base responses, but the act of resisting has been proven time and time and time again, looking at our evolutionary history, to be pretty fucking futile in the face of communal thought. That we will electrocute each other because someone with a clipboard told us. And that shows you the psychology of where we're at. It doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're evil. It shows you where your psychology is. And if you'd stop judging how broken or evil you think people are, you could really look at the psychology and go, oh, well, what it is that I can't do a plank. That's really what it is. You know what a plank is, right? I can't do a plank. What is an ego but just a plank that holds itself for a really long time? And when you're building that ego, you'd be like, I'm not going to be able to fucking hold this plank all the time. You can't even imagine it. And that's what progress looks like. Excuse me, that's exactly what progress looks like. What do you call human meat, right? Well, like if you kill a sheep, it can become mutton. If you kill a cow, it becomes beef, right? If you kill a calf, it becomes veal. If you kill a pig, it becomes pork, right? So what would a human be? And leave it to the French to tell us what it would be. It would be an ouvrier. Someone's going to correct me, hopefully. But person flesh, right? The flesh of person. Because all these are French terms. So really human meat would be ouvrier. And you haven't heard that word because it's not in our vernacular, but it used to be in our vernacular. It used to be saturated in our vernacular, right? It used to be everything. It turns out that when we are nervous, we actually like to eat ourselves, right? When you bite your nails, I'd like for you to picture that actually, if you think about what it's like when you're mindlessly biting your nails, I want you to picture that is your ancestor, but like times like 100. Like that urge is just there, but it's like the only urge. It's like one of the only urges that's there. Really picture that, because you really start to understand how far we've come, right? If you're interested in the jaguar serial killer, Ritual of the Bacops is a book. You can read more about it in there. Just wanted to say that. Zippy Toe Tech. Wow. All right, so welcome to the days of wearing skin. I'm just going to read the second paragraph. Annually, slaves and captives were selected as sacrifices to Zippy Toe Tech. After having the heart cut out, the body was carefully flayed to produce a nearly whole skin, which was then worn by the priest for 20 days during the fertility ritual that followed the sacrifice. Do you understand? Fertility followed sacrifice. Oh, I'm so turned on. When you wear that skin, it really just turns me on, Zippy. I would just love to go to the prom with you. Are you going to make me a corsage of ears, right? The act of putting on new skin was a ceremony. Translated as a personating of the god. The skins were often adorned with bright feathers and gold jewelry when worn during the festival. Victorious warriors wore flailed skin, carrying out mock skirmishes through the city. They passed through the city begging alms and blessing whoever gave them food and offerings. Another thing they would do that's not mentioned here, but they would actually go into the home dressed in skin and demand wine. And they would get drunker. And this is that same Mexican ritual. If you've been following along here, or if you read my book, which is right here, but there's the giants. It's all there. There's this history. We have this thing where we're giants and we figure out how to poison them, and so we do. And that's what a raccoon turns into by poisoning other things, right? It's weird, but that's literally how it happens. That's why we have so much guilt around the ego. This is us, guys. I'm sorry, but this was us. This was us. The twisted knot on the chest is from where they had to cut it open there. There really used to be children of the corn. That people were flailed like corn to resemble the husk. That was called the living seed. The shavings of the victim's head symbolizes the removal of the head of the corn when it was husked. Zippy Toltec evolved into a war god. Connection with it developed the necessity of capturing victims for sacrifice to ensure good crops. It's a hunger. When you turn skin inside out, all of these bulbs form. The flailed lord, where skin of sacrifice depicted in ceramic works as bulbous projections meant to represent fat deposits that line the inside of human skin. Sandals look like feet. You basically became that other person. Why would you become that other person? Because you're learning how to fill a body. Your psychology is learning how to fill a body. Most of you have roller skated, right? Most of you have done something where a pencil, if you write with a pencil, if you draw with a pencil, you're associating. You're putting the end of your psychology into the end of the pencil, into the end of the wheels, into the end of the skateboard, into your car, into the end of the bumper has your psychology in it. The more you drive, the more you're able to push your ego into that bumper, and you know where your car is. You do. And you only have this because you have an abundance of electricity now. Meat probably had a lot to do with that. It probably did. A lot of evolutionary factors led you to where you are now, where you have an abundance of electricity. The organ that burns the most calories, you all know this, is your brain. It's not your femur muscles. It's not even digestion. It's your fucking brain. Why? Because you're generating all this plasma to associate. You're pouring yourself into something and you're becoming that. And this is what that looks like. That urge to do that before we know how to do that looks like this. It looks like Zippy Toltec. We were exercising our mythology without a pen. That we were raising our own status and our own value by insisting that we could become a god, but we had to kill ourselves. And that now we have a psychology, we have a religion that believes that God lives inside you. Right? It used to be that if you died, then you would become God, but now it's God lives inside me. It's showing you the same psychology that's raising it up, right? It's you can just see the footprints. It's beautiful. Not all the footprints are beautiful. The bottom of the two towers is this lady flailed into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. And that after you die, your body is thrown down. The reason why these you realize that the reason why these structures are steep is because you throw the bodies down. That's why. And this is where I think you guys are gonna kind of go, damn, James, I didn't know this. Maybe. But what I'm about to tell you is that most of the sacrifice wasn't actually for religion. It was for cannibalism. That when you start to look at what actually was happening around the land, that Zippy Toltec was necessary because there was a pretty large market requirement for cannibalism. And I want you to know why. The reason why cannibalism was so necessary is because the psychology, the brain, the developing brain needed more calories. And Amuraka did not have the capability of having that much kind of livestock. A lot of us have this false impression of what the jungle looks like. We think, well, the jungle, it has everything. It actually doesn't. There's actually only certain things are going to survive there. And that you end up realizing deep down that the cannibalism is actually satisfying this psychological need for growth. It's a really, really important part of that. Some of these sacrifices, there's gladiator sacrifice. Basically, you're wearing someone else's skin. You could be sacrificed as a gladiator where you're tied basically to a giant stone and people pretend to fight you, but they just kill you. Typically, you've already been brought into the village at this point, so basically you're just being kind of finished, right? All psychology that's left is removed from you so that you will voluntarily walk up the pyramid. And then there's the arrow sacrifice where these things were happening but from far away, right? Like put him in a pit and just shoot arrows at him. It didn't matter because all these sacrifices were really just kind of fronts for what I think was just more of a much more natural kind of just desire for meat. This is Chakmol. People actually argue exactly what this guy did. But basically, you put your heart on his belly. And then every year he's asking you, hey man, do you want to put your heart on my belly? Do you want to? Right? You having a bad day? Because if you're having a bad day, you can come over here and put your heart, right? put your heart in my belly. And the reason why that worked is because that's where the psychology was at the time. A lot of people try and say, well, there wasn't really that much sacrifice, James. Really wasn't. And these are the same people that are trying to insist that rednecks built the pyramids. It's the exact same kind of thinking. But there could not be more proof than, guys, if you start to name utensils, right? If you're like the best choice for crockery for human hearts, if you have a formal and a casual piece of crockery to hold a human heart, you are sacrificing a lot of people, right? And our crockery is pretty much gives us away what we like to do, right? We like tea kettles, we like mugs, we like strainers, we like peelers, right? We have graters, we have knives, right? We do not have a crockery for human hearts. Okay, so it shows you that this was in fact a big deal, right? This jaguar was a big part of that. More crockery, but this wearing of the skin, I think, really is giving away this idea of occupying the body. You were occupying skin. It's a very, very important thing to learn how to do. The King Mexica myth recounts the journey of Ecatl, a wind god who was an aspect of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, a powerful Mesoamerican deity. Ecatl travels to Mictlan, the land of the dead, where he retrieves the bones of long dead ancestors. He grinds their bones and mixes the powder with his blood offered in sacrifice. With this potent mixture, the god formed a new race of humans, according to the Mexica cosmology, inhabits the present fifth age of creation. What is inside of bone, right? This guy's like, he grounded up bones and blood. What marrow? Bone marrow, right? Some of the most nutritious part of any animal at all. In fact, even scavenged meat has a lot of marrow inside those bones. It's vital if you're growing the psychology. Do you follow? The hunger was there, and we're not going to look at each other and say, I want to eat people so my psychology can grow. We're not going to say that to each other. We can't even be honest with each other at Thanksgiving. Do you think we're really going to came from a place where we're like, yeah, Dave, we just really want to be able to think clearer and have more egoic electricity, so we're going to fucking eat you right now. It doesn't happen that way. You decide that the gods are angry and that the gods told me that the only way that we can satisfy their anger is we have to kill Dave. And you know that's humans, right? That's what humans do. They talk like that. They say shit like that. You know that. We're gonna have to stop it now. Sorry. Pick it back up on Friday though. It's actually a lot of stuff to cover. Sorry if I did. I'm not sorry. Thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed Wednesday. This different time. Let me know what you think about that. Actually, I'm seeing by the numbers, maybe this isn't great. Although it's hard to say because maybe we lost a lot because of the broken stream. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But Dojo's next. It's 10 minutes. If you're part of Dojo, you can come check that out. Arc of Baphomet. It's worth it. It was actually on the bestseller list the first day there. You could put it back on there by helping me right now. You could get that book. You could totally get that book. You could. That's all. So check it out. Hey, there's Martin in the audience. Guys, check it out. We'll talk again soon. All right. Let's sign her out. God, I hope the audio works. And I guess I'm not streaming on the Mac anymore. Oh, see, I don't hear anything. You guys probably hear it, don't you? Tell me if you hear the music.